The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. Africans will take a step forward and 10 steps backwards. There's outrage in the continent. Zimbabwe president has decided that there's hardship in Zimbabwe. They are going through pain. So for that matter, the struggle of Robert Mugabe has to come to an end. Mugabe did everything possible to give back the land to the blacks. But the new president is saying that due to the sanctions that they have received for taking that bold decision to make sure that Africans become the rightful owner of the land, they need to reverse it in order for them to do business with the West. They have to change the policy, give back the land to the few white people who are controlling. And you hear some Africans saying they were not prepared, they don't have the know-how, we don't have the machines. So we have to still give back the land to these people. Like the leaders we have here who always talk about the problem of the African and getting the African solution to the problem are never ready to do that. Why is it that Africans always want to look for an easy way out of situation? Why are we so scared of sanctions? Why is it that instead of giving back the land to the white minority, we ask Iran, how are they able to maneuver their way out of these sanctions, yet they are still thriving, stronger, and we are seeing what is happening currently? To the point that the same people who said they have the power to do whatever are now calling on China to come and beg, and China said no. How did Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, how are they doing it? They are under sanction. So will we continue to say because of sanctions we can never take bold decisions on our own?
So for those of you that want to understand why the Zimbabwean government is giving back 67 farms to Europeans, listen to the Minister of Agriculture.
If we go to the constitution, it says we shall compensate former farm owners, white farmers, for the improvements that they've made on the land. And that is what we are saying. That the improvements that they've made on the land, they must be compensated. The constitution says we must pay BIPPA farmers for the compensation for land and for the improvements. And that's what I say. That those unoccupied BIPPA farms, they are 67. And that is what the government is considering.
Now, the two issues that are being brought about by the Minister of Agriculture of Zimbabwe with a selective reading of our constitution and a selective application of law are the two main issues that used to make me criticize the current president of Zimbabwe, President Emmerson Mnangagwa, in 2018 when he came into office. I criticized him because, first of all, he accepted to compensate white farmers for developments on stolen land. It is common legal practice, and it is also common law, that you cannot compensate a thief for, first of all, stealing your property or buying stolen property, and for making any developments on your land, because those developments will be considered vandalism. Instead, what is supposed to happen in legal practice across the world is that the thief is supposed to return the stolen property. They're supposed to compensate you for all the time you didn't have your property. They're supposed to give you damages for any vandalism that has been done on your property, and they're supposed to return any profits, what we call unjust enrichment, that they made off your land. But for some reason in Zimbabwe, under the presidency of a lawyer, they have overlooked all these things to change the law to suit the European white landowners. Number two, President Mnangagwa has then said that he wants to return 67 farms and plantations that were owned by Europeans who either bought them from settlers that stole the land or got them from government which did not compensate the original owners of that land. Now, these farms are being returned because of an agreement that is known as BIPPA, or Bilateral Investment Promotion and Protection Acts. These agreements are signed by Europeans with particularly African countries, third world countries, or nations that they colonized or enslaved to protect their property from confiscation and from being nationalized in the event that the black people in that country wake up, or the natives of that country wake up and decide to demand reparations or compensation for colonialism. So when colonialism ended A lot of European companies and European investors continue to hold huge amounts of lands in the former colonies. In Zimbabwe, the biggest landowner today continues to be the Oppenheimer family and the Queen of England. So to protect these colonial loots, these lands that they got from colonialism, many of them decided to say to our governments, if you want us to continue to invest money in your country, if you want us to continue to create jobs, some of them even bribed our government officials, you need to sign what we call these BIPPA agreements. And what these BIPPA agreements do is that when one day you decide to expropriate land without compensation, when you decide one day to do land reform, or when you begin to realize that we owe you money and reparations for colonialism and slavery, you must assure us that you will not take our properties and you will not take our land. So this is how our governments signed these BIPPA agreements. They then went a step further to ensure that when we are writing our constitutions, they would also influence the process of writing the constitution to protect these BIPPA farms and these colonial farms, or the so-called vandalism and development that took place on those lands. If you're following, you're realizing that there's a pattern here. We were colonized by nations that used guns to take over our land, our minerals, and our labor. Then they gave us independence, and then we were colonized by capital and investors who utilized agreements and changing our laws in order for them to take control of stolen land. So you must be wondering, so what happened in Zimbabwe? How did this stolen land become legally owned and protected by BIPPA agreements? Well, they used the writing of the constitution. What they did is they put Zimbabwe under sanctions when Zimbabwe took its land back from white settlers and gave it back to its people. The sanctions began to deprive people of jobs, healthcare, education, and development. So people started saying, we're going to vote for the opposition. The opposition almost took over in 2008. So because of that near takeover, a GNU government came into effect. That GNU government was influenced by the Europeans who were funding the opposition to say, if you want sanctions to be removed, write a new constitution. And this constitution was influenced by white South Africans, the UNDP, UN Development Program, Europeans, and these are the people that said you must compensate white farmers for development of stolen land and you must give back BIPPA farms. So it is this manipulation of our constitution that allowed us to be recolonized and have our land taken by legal means and legal instruments. These are the instruments that are now being quoted by the Minister of Agriculture.
Africans cannot pay compensation. We need to trade with the West. Must it always be with the West? What about trading more among ourselves? So because we want to trade with the West, we have to deny the black person his or her rights. If we continue with this line of doing things, when will the African ever be free? Robert Mugabe knew that these things are going to happen. He stood firm. But the new leadership is looking for an easy way out. And that is the problem of the African. That is why we are not moving anywhere. That is why we'll continue to be here and eating democracy. Because the West will always use the weapon called sanction against the African. And they know how fearful the African is. See, the truth of the matter is simple. As Africans, until we are ready to endure, we will never make a headway. They have created a generation of Africans that can never withstand pain. We do not have what they call endurance spirit in us. Our forefathers endured a lot. But you, the people of today, as Africans who are looking for freedom, do not have that. You want everything to be easy for you. And that is why we have created a hole and people are using that hole against you, the African. For how long will this continue? We don't have the know-how. We don't have the machine like other people are putting it. What were we using before these people came to us? How is Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso doing it? What are the other means we can survive without the West? Africans are not thinking about self-dependency. It must always be the West. It must always be the West. So we'll continue to please the West and never please the African. And how do we get out? How do we become sovereign? How do we as Africans become sovereign people if we continue to be walking on this same line? What message are we giving to the youth that are coming? Telling them indirectly that you see this life, you always have to please your oppressors before you can make it. The leaders are not teaching us endurance. And because of their political ambitions, they will always take decisions that will favor them and not you. And you find Africans who will find 1,001 reasons to defend us. We need to have endurance spirit. Have we seen China? China was not China like this some 40 years back. Look at Singapore. Look at Japan. These countries, Africa was ahead of them. Today, look at where they are. But today, the African, especially the youth, we are not ready to endure. People will be looking at what the leaders in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are doing and ask, what does it put in my pocket? Because we are brainwashed. We don't know that building wealth doesn't come just a day or two. It takes years, it takes decades to start seeing the fruitfulness. And that is why the leaders who chose easy access brought us to where we are. Let's say yes to them. So they have to take out Nkrumah, Sankara, and all the leaders who are fighting. And it's the same thing they are doing in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. Getting people they can easily buy because they think about themselves. And if we continue this way, I don't think the freedom we are looking for will ever get it. Like the Finland president said, if we continue to be choosing sides and not stand firm on our own, we will lose this opportunity. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall. And united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we'll make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world, in Africa, Southern Africa, and in Zimbabwe.